Joining me today is head of product at NOps, Tim Cassell. Tim, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, John. It's glad to be a part of your podcast here.
Yeah, so Tim, today we're talking about RIs for public cloud. And I really think it's helpful to everybody to understand what reserved instances are. Can you help us understand those?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of simplify it. At the end of the day, is they're a commitment of dollars to, based off a term, and you're going to get a certain discount associated to it, right? And so they work for both compute, what I call EC2, does it for RDS, cache, open source, et cetera. And there's some others out there that people probably aren't aware of, but long and short of it is I'm making a commitment. And with that commitment, I'm going to get a certain discount on it.
How long are these commitments usually for?
Well, standard out of the box, right? When I say the AWS versions of them, right? You can do 1 or 3-year commitments. You can get, if you're willing to, they're like no different, let's say other financial things that you may do in your life, right? So if you put more money down, you're going to get more discount. If you put some money down, you're going to get a little bit, less discount. But if you put no money down, you get less, right? So the more you put down, the longer the term you commit, right? I'm going to give you a little bit more, right? On a discount perspective.
Why would I actually select or use reserved instances for my environment? I mean, to me, it says I got to think about a long-term goal. Am I going to have these instances around forever? Or, I mean, am I really locking myself into using my application on this specific instance all the time? Or really, how does it work?
Well, it depends. If we took, let's take EC2, for example, and then we'll talk about maybe just one of the other examples because they all kind of work the same. EC2 is the only one that works a little bit different, right? So first of all, the nomenclature, right? I always go back, I've been doing this since, probably 13 plus years, right? I've been doing Amazon and, I think reserves maybe came out 10, I don't know what the exact date on that was, but long and short of it is, they're not necessarily a reserved instance. When you think reserved, you think capacity, right? You think, hey, I'm going to reserve this instance. It's a pricing plan, right? Yes, there are some that are tied to capacity, but a majority of people leverage them just for pricing plans, right? And so you got there's a couple ways. If I look at the EC2, right, there's what they have is standard and convertibles, right? And so if you buy one of these standard ones, you do have the ability to sell it on the AWS marketplace. So if something did change and it doesn't fit the family in which you have it, you have the ability to sell that. There's a ton of great marketplace out there. There's a lot of strategies associated to that, right? It doesn't mean that it's going to sell, right? The convertible is a less riskier kind of play, right? Well, standard kind of think is riskier. Guess what? The riskier it is, the more money I can, more savings I can do, right? Convertible, I'll take a little less savings, and I minimize some of that risk, right? So now I have the ability to switch things between different instance types, right? Kind of think of it as like, I characterize it as convertibles are like refinancing your house, right? At the end of the day, you still owe that money, right? But you're just kind of stretching it out over a period of time. Right?
I'm extending my loan terms a little bit longer and longer.
I'm just going to extend it, right? It's like I'm just keep on, I'm mortgaging my future. At the end of the day, is those dollars eventually have to get consumed, right? But
am I ever going to pay this thing off?
Right, exactly, exactly. And then the other things that EC2 has is, and it goes against compute is savings plans. We'll probably touch a little bit on those, but that's EC2, gives you some flexibility to manage risk, where an RDS, majority of those others is, it gives you a little flexibility within a family, depending on what type of, engine you're using, right? So if you're using Postgres or MySQL, it gives you some flexibility within a family, right? So if something went up, that RI could still be used. If something went down, that RI could still be used. But you don't have the ability to sell it, right? So it's more, what I look at those is your more traditional capacity kind of planning exercises that you do, right? You're going to look at it on some period of time. You're going to assess, you're going to build in some capacity for growth or whatever. And then once you feel comfortable with that, you buy a reserved instance. Like I said, is if you do the math, right? It's like run it for 7.5 months, you know, from you'll get your money back. If you run it past, you're going to save some money.
Oh, that's nice to know. So you're telling me when I say a reserve instances, AWS doesn't go and say, this box is yours, only yours, you're going to use these, but this is a financial construct really for savings so they can plan their capacity or?
You know, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're helping AWS do their capacity. Yeah, you can, like I said, you can leverage it for capacity constraints, right? So when I first did them at Workday, that's exactly what we were doing, right? We were basically wanting to ensure that we had the capacity to run our workloads on them. But that was at a time when AWS, man, I mean, there used to be capacity issues, right? I don't run into those very often, right? Maybe for some sort of, you know, I call them the alphabet families, right? So got a D and a bunch of, sorry, occasionally I'll throw out an F-bomb.
I think Zoom cut out there for a second for
a bunch of freaking alphabets after the letters, right? You know, they may not be as much capacity on that, but that's a variety of people just leverage them for, like I said, just it's pricing plans underneath the table.
I think Zoom cut out there anyway, so we saved on the.
As John, you know, when you start, you have to record me, or if you don't record me, my real language comes out. My West Virginia English comes out very clearly. So I will try to watch my language.
Don't worry about it. This is all now. We'll check that box for explicit.
Exactly. NC-17 when you got Tim on your podcast.
It'll flash across the screen. I want to get back to the EC2 version, but on RDS, I can't change my RDS instance type. I mean, what's my flexibility versus the EC2?
Like, once again, it depends on the engine you're running, right? So if you're running like the free versions of, think of like Oracle, right? You're paying for a license, right? You got to be exact on those ones, right? So if you're running you know, I'm just making up things like M by 4X large, right? You need to you know, for that RI to be in effect or be used, right? You need to exactly run on that particular instance, right? That instance type, right? Where say for like MySQL, they call it the flex, right? So you have flexibility within a family. So if I'm running an M6G, for example, right? As long as I stay within that family, no matter what the size of, right? So if I bought an RI at a smaller version, right, and I upgraded, that RI will still be used, right? It's just because it has what they call the flex, right? Within a family, right? So when I say families, think of it as everything, you know, everything before the dot, right? So the size, dot, you know, there's your 4X's, your nanos, your micros, your, you know, a zillion X's, right? All those are what they call the size, and the family is before, right? So since I started, there are now, you know, I counted these, right? So I have a graph. I did this for a simple, like, you know, how much is it kind of grown and how harder is it getting harder and harder to do these, right? And now there's, you know, this is as of last year, I counted and I stopped counting, but there were 77 families back in November, I think it was 2021 when I counted it. So 77 different families, you know, and 400 plus different types of instances within those families, right? And so what they've done is, you know, they have made families to fit unique workloads, right? Well, you know, and so family matters. As the more they come up, the more riskier it is to buy an RI, right? So if you're into a specialized instance type, you know, you got to look at the market, right? What region you're in, what, region matters, instance families matter, right? You know, if you buy in these standards, like you get more savings, there is a high amount of risk that when you do switch and you go outside a family and you want to get rid of it, chances are you're going to be stuck with that, right? So you're going to still pay for something you're not being used, right? That's why convertibles have a little bit more, you know, people kind of like those a little bit more if they're managing things, you know, big environments that go across different things. And it's just a little easier to kind of, like I said, refinance those things.
Well, with the
That make any
exception,
sense?
yeah, no, that does. Because my next question is, with the exception of you, why does it to me seem like our eyes are so complex and hard to manage? Because I mean, I know you understand it. You live and
It's
breathe this stuff, but
right. Because it is. You know, I look at it as, you know, as I look through, it's like, you know, every time Amazon tries to simplify it, like ad savings plan, they make it even more complex, right? And so it's not an easy game to be in, right? You know, if you're large, you know, and we'll talk a little bit about the product we're building, right? We take off, you know, there's certain best practices, and you know, if you can automate the crap out of this shit, right? You know, you can really maximize your particular savings. But if you're trying to do this, you know, on a quarterly, monthly, or whatever basis, right? It's like you're leaving so much savings on the floor, and your chances of you having unused are extremely high. But yeah, it's not easy. It's breathing to me, right? And so, but it's complex, right? It just really is. So, you know, at the end of the day is, do you want to be in the business of AWS pricing plans? Is that you guys' core competency as a company, right? Or is it, you know, what product you're actually building, right? And so, you know, that's where InOps kind of comes into play to help out customers.
is it easy or is it possible for me to manage this using AWS Console and some spreadsheets, or will it really get complex to, you know, am I going to be leaving some money on the table at that point? And can I do
Yeah, I
this as a
mean,
single person?
well, you can do it, you know, like I said, you can, you know, put a man on the moon. We can do anything, right? Now, is it the wise thing to do, right? And it really depends on your kind of spin and where companies are in their sort of, you know, growth patterns, right? But like I said, is if you want to maximize your savings, you got to know what is going on at the time, right? You know, every time you do something manually, and you're, first of all, in the AWS console, it gives great recommendations, right? I'll be honest with you, right? It's like recommend, you know, from a recommendation of what they're suggesting is, you know, it's pretty good. You know, others you can fine tune a little bit better, but at the end of the day, how much more value? You can go off and buy those, and do that. But the point is, when you're making those decisions, you're losing money, right? Because it takes time, right? I mean, and it's kind of dated. You know, these things are a little bit dated, right? So you're not maximizing your complete savings by doing it manually, right? 9 times that, you know, I always look at this one. I have a story of like when I was at Workday, right? We just, you know, this is years ago. We just implemented, you know, continuous development, right? So we were pretty much at the very beginning, very waterfall, and we did this, and it was over. You know, I go to North Carolina every year in July, right? And so I'm responsible for sort of the, you know, the overall build, this freaking development thing, right? So they turn this shit on. I'm sorry, they turn it on in July, and here I am. I'm on some flight to North Carolina, right? And I'm just, you know, back in the day, you still were working, right? I'm in a hotel in North Carolina, man, and my bill was just out of control. It just, you got to think about it. Every time we ran it, you know, at some developer checked in, we were running hundreds of thousands of tests across all these different instances, and we were leveraging the spot as much as we could. But at the end of the day, is I had to come in on top of that with some RIs, and you know, calculating that in some spreadsheet that I had developed. You know, no, I have some mad skills on that kind of shit. But at the end of the day is, you know, I also need to get approval, right? I'm buying $1 million worth of RIs in some hotel in North Carolina with 2 kids screaming at me. And I'm trying to find a VP that's actually available to approve this purchase, right? So I don't know, that's my story. But long and short of it is, we learned very quickly that we can't continue to do it that way and build automation to basically make the same decisions that I was making, but on a more automated basis, right?
I agree with you that by the time you actually go into the AWS console, now their recommendations are usually, spot on or really close to it, but those recommendations are X amount of time old and your environment might have changed where you need that continuously evaluation,
Or
the
you need,
automation.
right, or you need some approval, right?
Yep.
Because you're doing this on a quarterly basis, and then by the time you wait for someone to approve it, right, like you just losing money,
Yep.
right? It's just an old school way of thinking, right? This is the stuff that we, back in the day when I was at PayPal and we started that, right? I was just charging some data centers and stuff like that, right? I mean, that was your traditional way that you manage things, right? You need this approval, right? With the cloud, man, I mean, it's dynamic. You got to be on top of it to take full advantage of these savings things. So.
Well, and also the person who is managing it is only working how many hours a day or whatever. They're not working on the weekend. You need
Not,
automation. You need tools in
yeah,
place.
the dude's not hungover. He doesn't have family problems, right? I mean, everything you think about, the whole reason we automate in the first place, right, is, doesn't have emotions, right? It's like all this stuff that you think through, and procrastination and not getting to it, and all this kind of stuff. Like I said, to maximize your savings, automation in this area is to me, it's a must, right? To fully take advantage of this.
I'm going back to something you said earlier where you're not in the business to manage RIs or to like handle that. You're in the business for your product, focus on your product or your application.
Right.
Let's talk about how NOps could help do that, because I know you have a program here that you want to talk about that we're very passionate about. I'm curious what that program is and why would you use that versus your manual way?
Right. Well, we have two ways in which we provide the information, right? The information we use to make a decision, right? That's the way I kind of look at it, right? So we look at basically, long and short of, we leverage base of events, and we have the ability to understand pretty close to near time the interaction between something, either starting, stopping, or terminating, and how that impacts the reserved instances that you have, and then being able to take that information and then make decisions off that, right, on your behalf, right, and not have to worry about the risk. Meaning that the risk, when we talk about risk, is your ability to manage a reserved instance that's for term, right, to maximize your savings, and also not being able to, by having a reserve that's not covered by, usage, right? So we call that unused, right? So we have a program which we will manage those for you, and you don't have any of that risk. And then we pass on a net, we call it shared save, which allows us, if you look at the economics and we split the savings, it's a better, we have better savings that if you used a 1 year standard RI fully termed, right, will provide more savings associated to that, right? There's a reason we can do that, so I could say it's always a math equation, right? We just happen to we buy the 3 year standards and maximize the crap out of savings, right? Divide that, and and we give you your half and we take our half, and we basically manage all the risks. What that allows you to do as a customer, right, is not focus on AWS pricing plans, but take advantage of innovation, right? So at the end of the day, the other thing that I like to tell people when they invest into RIs is you're investing into yesterday's tech, right? At the end of the day, you're investing in yesterday's tech,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so, if you can predict 1 year, good luck, right? If you can predict 3 years, you're in the wrong business, right? You ought to be doing something else, right? And so, us doing that for you and providing that savings, it allows you the flexibility to move at your own pace. You don't need to tell us. We're just following what you do. If you decide you want to buy your own, we just look at stuff that you're not doing and try to maximize your savings for that. But it allows people to kind of innovate, right? When I say innovate, it means potentially taking advantage of a different type of instance type that fits your workload better, right? You may be on one, you can switch to another without any sort of penalties, right? Um, Innovate could mean moving more to things that I'm passionate about as serverless, right? So if you've ever managed a box in your entire life and had to patch it, I never ever want to do that. So when I hear people leveraging EC2, it's like serverless to me is the future and getting out of that business, right? And so that's a new tech, right? The Lambdas of the world, and God knows what they, the Fargates of the world, from a compute standpoint, that's good things. Or moving, who knows? I mean, the number of managed or services Amazon's coming out with, I mean, they're exponential, right? And taking maybe we're moving workloads on something that seemed appropriate at the time, moving it to a different service, right? So we see people that were still doing databases. I'll take a simple one, using EC2. Now instead of running on there, they can move to RDS. Now if they were managing at RI, well, that compute went away, right? All that resource went to
So how does that work?
And so instead, they invested into a tech. Compute seems pretty standard, right? It's not going away. Well, what you run on it is important, right? So if you're doing a database, you move the RDS. Well, you might have like let's take if you did a convertible out there, right? Well, yeah, I did a convertible, and I can manage that. Well, guess what? The same usage is not there, right? So you can extend, once again, continue to extend that long-term pain, or you eat it, right? You just basically eat it, or hopefully you can sell that off. Long and short up, we're trying to get people to focus on their business. We'll give you the same saving. We'll basically allow you to take advantage of what I consider where you're really going to save is take advantage of real tech, not AWS pricing plans.
That's an interesting that's a very interesting concept on taking advantage of it. Now, what about reserve instances that are unused? Say I have purchased already some reserve instances. Are you going to manage those and find the optimum? Now I've got X number. Like what happens? Do they sit there? Are they wasted money for me? Do you buy them back? Do you resell them? How does it work?
Yeah, if you're leveraging our program, we allow you that flexibility to continue to manage. Like I said, if you want to buy them, knock yourself out. You got stuff out there, knock yourself out, right? We're only looking at things that you don't do and adjust accordingly. Those are case by case, right? If you bought a bunch of windows out there in some crazy region, we're not going to be able to take that risk for it, right? I mean, we're not in the business of taking too much risk in those particular cases, right? But if they're in something that they want, they're in a good market and they're Linux and stuff like that, those are easy, and they want us to just take those over, we will take those over. But so that's one program, right? So like I said, that's great for anywhere, from, 10K a month to, millions a month, right? We can help kind of manage those things for you and provide you savings without you worrying about it. But there's also companies out there, right? I mean, even my previous one, right? I mean, we already, built systems that basically can automate these reserved instances, right? And so the challenge of that is, once again, is leverage, it's the old data that you're making, I like saying you're chasing ghosts, right? Because it's not there anymore. So we have opened up our platform basically to allow folks to have near real-time data to feed into those systems and make those decisions for them, right? So we have two models, right? One, hands-free, risk-free, don't worry about it. And number two is we opened up basically what determines when the triggers in real time to feed systems that folks that larger companies, right, may have already had some of this, that just helps them fine tune and get more out of their dollar, right, with more real-time data.
Tim, we're going to have to do another episode on option number 2, because I want to dig into that. And we might have to do I don't want to say a demo. We have to do a couple of use cases or scenarios, because I can see the value of that for companies who want just the data and to make their own.
It's all about economics, right?
Yep.
I mean, at the end of the day is, you're going to get to a certain scale, right? That, it does make sense, right? if you're sharing a certain amount, right, and it starts to get above and beyond, a handful of people, right, it may make sense to squeeze more out of it by
Yeah.
doing it yourself, right? And so having both plays out there, it will allow us to hit our different types of customer bases, right? Like I said, it's an economic play based off the customer, to be honest with you, right? And so, if they want us to try to squeeze as much out as possible, right? They may, and it's above and beyond sort of headcount. We'll open up the thing to allow them to get more out of it than data. And if it's something that, at the end of the day, they don't give a crap about ever managing these things, but want that savings and flexibility without the risk, we offer our solution.
I like it. Let's go back to option number one. Walk me through the process. I said, yes, I want ShareSave. Sign me up. How soon do I start realizing my savings?
Pretty much immediately, right? We want to, we try. It depends on how we implement it, but long and short of it is, we will get a good picture of your historical usage, right, and patterns, right. And we have some AI, and we try to predict and all this kind of crap, right. But long and short of it is, if we have that historical right off the bat, we'll be able to make those decisions immediately, right? And so then we just watch, right? We watch patterns. We develop patterns, right? Based off of your particular usage type to determine if I'm going to buy additional, sell, or what, right? And so it just turns on, and then on a monthly basis, we provide you the breakdown of your savings and what we did.
How often
it's
you guys
completely hand-free? Go ahead.
No, that's all right. And I like the completely hands-free, because my next question actually is going to know, how often are you guys looking at this to make decisions based off of my patterns? Because I can see, say you purchase, 10 of these types of servers, and my application, my infrastructure has changed and fluctuated, and now you only need 8. So how quickly are you making decisions based off this data?
Yeah, I mean, we're watching it in real time, right? I mean, so if we make like that particular example, right, something changed in which we basically are overcommitted on a particular RI, right? The beauty of it is, as a customer, you don't have to worry about it, right? I'm taking that risk. That's my issue, right? And so we will then, sometimes depending on the usage type, we'll hold on to it because it might change, right? It might go back up, right? If we decide that it's definitely a different change, we'll then get rid of it through the marketplace.
Now, is there a lot of automation built into this for purchasing and making these decisions?
Oh yeah, it's completely automated, right? Yeah, completely automated, right? So you just take, we build it based off of, just pretty standard, the standard sort of, if you were doing this perfectly, this is how you would particularly do it. We just built that into our automation, and we leverage the AI to help determine when to trigger that, right? And so, and there's some risk calculation of how much we're willing to, there's all kinds of things that we're looking at, of like, because to me, is an unused RI is not a scary thing, right? You can overreact to those things, or you hold, and it's like the stock market, right? At the end of the day, that's all it is, right? How much, it may go down, right? But is it going to be more trouble trying to get rid of it versus seeing if the change based off what you've seen previously as a usage of this particular customer, right? But long and short of it is, that's our ability. We're managing all that risk, right? So that's how well I do my particular job, and the money. The cool thing to the customer is they're not responsible for any of that, right? And so if their usage goes down and it goes to something else, right, then we're immediately monitoring that and trying to cover that with a savings vehicle like our RI.
Tim, with today's economy and how things are going, RIs are actually, to me personally, a big thing for an immediate cost savings. Don't require a heavy lift. Let's do this. Let's get this type done.
Right. Well, here's a great example, and we're kind of heading into, I mean, I think we're all kind of feeling a little of this impact, but previous experience of what happened, when COVID hit it, right? And so, you had a variety of people were buying and, basically managing their own sort of commitments, with savings plans or reserved instances or whatever it was, right? You know, COVID hits, things, certain companies, were extremely impacted by that immediately, right? CFOs going out there and saying, let's scale down infrastructure, right? And the, the DevOps, or they would scale it down, right? And guess what? Bill's exactly the same. And they're like, well, why, right? Well, you made these commitments, right?
Yep.
And so these commitments will live as long as you for that particular term, unless you're able to adjust those. Like I said, you can refinance the crap out of them and move them out into the future with a convertible or standard, right? Or you try to sell them. Well, guess what? If everybody's in the same issue, right? Who's buying them, right? Now, the beauty, and this is where the program really took over off, is like, if you have a balance of different customers with different type of, you take a DoorDash, well, guess what? Business was great, right? And so there's there's ability to potentially sell those to those customers. Every customer wasn't completely impacted on that. And now, right, with the economic, environment we are currently in, and a lot of unknowns, and I think everybody's seen their 401k cut in half, and those same type of CFOs are out there looking at how can I reduce my my footprint. And like I said, commitments can be one of those things that holds your ability to do that. And we're trying to, like I said, help customers not have to deal with that, right? But if you're on my program, at the end of the day, that's my risk. You're able to scale it down without the penalty.
Well, we're also able to see the visibility of other customers who are in need of these reserve instances, where you just mentioned, where DoorDash was like, yeah, I need all these instances. I need this to go. Well, now you, as another customer, you can sell them to them and offload them. So now you're figuring out how to get the best savings for the customer and who else is in need.
Right. I mean, we have, DoorDash, not custom. I was using them as simple.
No,
example, but long
disclaimer, DoorDash, not a customer, but give us a
what
contact.
I was trying, just trying to show you how markets work. Some up, some down, right? And so there's some people are winning, some people are losing, right? So you're kind of marrying those two things, right? And that was COVID, right? This one's, to me, is what we're about to head into is a little bit different. So who sees, right? So I'm not sure I think, right now it kind of feels like everybody's losing. But in the day is we're trying to provide, minus this condition, right? Is at the end of the day, my program's all about giving our customers the ability to innovate and take advantage of new tech. I always say new tech is always cheaper from a people an infrastructure standpoint than the old stuff, right? And so if I can free up that sort of, the fear of, because I always look at like they make these commitments, and then priorities change and they're afraid to do that, or they won't make the commitment, or whatever it is. I want to take that fear or whatever it is out of their mind and allow them to take advantage of that particular tech. Be honest with you, to me, yes, I'm going to give you some saving. To me, I'm really going to save them money by allowing them to do that, right?
Yep.
And so that's how we play it, versus just being a straight, hey, it's a management of RI crap, right? We're trying to help our customers innovate faster. And if I can remove some of those constraints, then that's adding value to our customers.
I'd like to add in value to the customers. Tim, before we wrap things up, I want to talk about savings plans real quick.
Yeah.
I'm an ex-Amazonian, and when I was at AWS, those were released. At first, it was like the complexity of understanding those, and it's very unique. You want to give everybody an understanding what are savings plans?
Yeah, savings plan's been out,
2019.
Was it 19?
Yep, October 2019.
Once again, it was that concept. It was supposed to make everything a lot easier for everybody to basically do these commitments, but basically it just added an extremely next level of complexity. What I deal with a lot of my customers right now, and or potential customers, is their inability to fully understand what they just did, right? And when they bought one of these, the biggest issue I deal with is the 3-year no upfront savings plan, and they're not completely utilized, right? And so I've run into customers because things change, right?
Yep.
Here, let me just very simply explain. Savings plans is now, instead of, it's the same thing. It's committing $1, right? So I commit, I'm going to spend $1 for the next 3 years, every hour of those 3 years, right? And that's going to be sort of my commitment. What Amazon then does, it looks at all your, I'm just going to do the main one. There's another one that works a little bit different, but I'll do the one that I see the most. It's going to look at all your usage in that particular, every hour, people don't get this, every hour it's going to look, all right, here's your usage across the world, right? Which instance, or which, between Lambda, Fargate, and EC2, what one gives me the most savings? That one, right? In region, Singapore, this M5, whatever, gives me the most. All right, so now I'm going to deduct that from my $1. What's next? Now it's this one. And so until I consume it, I'll consume that $1, then it stops. The next hour, it has the exact same thing, right? And so, and it could change which ones are in there based off your usage, right? And so that's how they work. They're extremely hard to understand which ones got picked, which ones got picked, and how's it, how are they coming up with it? It's kind of like a black hole. I mean, if you're really good at the cost and usage report, like I do, right? I dissect the crap out of it just to figure out how they're doing it.
Better you than me.
Yeah. Then once again, it's you stick them out there. It sounds simple, but what happens is, I'll have questions. I go, what happens if you decide to go to Lambda? Well, they're like, well, it'll cover me. I'm like, well, guess what? You base it off 63, or 66% savings on an EC2. A freaking Lambda is 14, right? And it, so yeah, so you basically, there's a line. You're committing this $1, right? So your savings are down, right? So at the end of the day, it's just you've gone above and beyond. So, like I said, is like they're great. I do like using them, in certain cases, right? It's just if you want a little bit more flexibility, buy a convertible. So the exact same kind of savings, and you can kind of manage them a little bit better there. If you want more savings out of that, buy a standard. There's just a little bit easier. And if there's things like windows out in the middle of nowhere, right? Focus on building a savings plan to go catch those things, right? But yeah, that's, and how they stack on top. I mean, the RI goes first, the savings goes second, right? And how you have your account structured will determine, I get people out there buying RIs and savings plan. They're wondering, why is my savings plan, why is it not picking this up? I'm like, well, because you got the RIs going first, and, and it's, and then what's left, you think you're going to go after this, and then, the savings plan picked up some random shit over in some other region because it provided more savings, right? It's really, really hard to fully understand, but we try to take all that complexity and just, at the end of the day, is people want savings. I like to say, people want sausage. They don't want to know the sausage making. We provide sausage.
that image I just had up.
Or cheesecakes. Or,
yeah, well, I'd rather the cheesecake.
Whatever the hell you do over
Philly. I gotta pause there for, no, I'm just kidding. So Tim, the last question as I wrap it up, how are we helping customers with savings plans, or what are our capabilities around it? Because you seem like the guru for all of this, and I'm sure you're tied into a number, but how are we helping?
We're looking to the same thing with the RIs that we do today. We're going to provide that same, we're now layering in the savings plan, right? So we're basically taking a look at all that crazy logic and basically presenting the impact from an RI to a savings plan and presenting that to our users so they can understand the exact which one's hit, the savings and all that kind of stuff. So that feature's on its way, right? And we're going to be able to open that and then allow people to, once again, decide on, if they want to go off and do it themselves. We'll provide that information to them, and then like I said, on the managed service piece, it provides the same information to us to make decisions for them, right? It's just another, like I said, it's another tool in the toolkit, right?
Yep.
And how you really understand not just what I just said, but how account structures ought to be put together to get them to act the way you want them to act, right? Is also very important, right? And people don't quite understand that, right? Like
Yep.
that one example, right? Is like if you got them both in the same account, the usages in that account, right? Our eyes are always going to go first, and so and then savings plans go second. If you move them out of different accounts, you can manipulate that a little bit better. But like I said, that's the stuff I think about when I I'm playing my 7-month-old kid, and
The order of
that.
precedence between the blocks and how they're working and
Just
stacking
like,
on top of each other.
It's like, it's Tetris, man. I mean, it's fun to do, right? But like it's giving a solution for customers. Like, why would anybody in the right? I love them. I'm passionate about them, but why would anybody want to be passionate about AWS pricing plans? I have no idea, right? It is not, if it's something that you can offload and it still provides you that same sort of RI or close to it, that doesn't take mind share away from your product, why would you do that? It's the same, why do things that are not core to what you do?
That's a good way to end this. Why do things that are not core to what you do? Focus on, the business, the application.
I don't know about you guys. Just real quick, I don't know about you guys, but I can mow my own grass. I can clean my own house. But at the end of the day that's not really what I want to be doing with my time and my core. I'm going to spend time with my 7 months. So I will fund or basically do those services, have someone do those services for me, right? Plus, I'm kind of lazy.
Tim, I won't tell you, I love mowing my lawn and being outside.
Exactly. So it takes away from anything. It takes away from my kid. I'm giving it.
See, now you put that on the flip side. I love spending time with my family, just the same. Tim, thank you so much for joining me and helping us understand reserve instances. This was actually a really fun conversation, casual back and forth on what they are, man.
No, it's always fun. Talk to you, John.
Yes, thank you. So everybody, Tim Cassell, head of product at NOps. My name is John Myer, chief evangelist at NOps. And until next time, we're out of here.